Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Ruth from PDA North America, and we have Kelsie Olds joining us today from the Occupational Therapist. Kelsie is somebody that we've been following for a while. We're very excited to speak to today, and we've got a handful of questions lined up for you. But do you want to give yourself a quick intro and tell everybody about your awesome book?
Yeah. Hello, I'm the occupational therapist online. I'm an occupational therapist by trade. I say the wrong one on the phone all the time now because I've thoroughly confused my brain. I recently wrote a book called Your Child's Point of View, Understanding the Reasons Kids Do Unreasonable Things. And on each set of two, it's only a physical book right now. I haven't figured out how to make it an ebook yet because it's very visual. On each set of left pages, then it gives a difficulty that a parent is having, or a teacher or a caregiver of any kind, that an adult is having, and what the child's point of view in that situation might be. And then on the right hand page, it gives details about um, anything developmental to know about that age and stage, and problem solving tips to try. So it's very pragmatic, also very like practical in theory. And I have heard from a lot of parents. It's not written for only parents of neurodivergent kids, but it has a lot of applicability there, based on my own brain and my children's brains and the people around me as I'm writing this. So
Yeah, and I would just say from my personal experience, I'm ADHD and have a really hard time focusing on books, but this is just so digestible, and you could just flip to a page and be like, "Okay, this
you
is what
could
I
read
want
it
to support."
literally one, like,
Yes,
section, one page at a time. It would be
and
fine.
they've laid it out so perfectly where it's like goes by age, by education. It's a fabulous, fabulous book, and I can't recommend it enough.
Thank you.
With that being said, we're going to jump into questions. So these were all submitted in advance by different people that follow us and follow you. So Julie asks, can you discuss interoception for a child who can't attend regular OT sessions, and if possible, related specifically to enchiriopresis, I'm going to say these wrong, enuresis, and hunger. It's a 10-year-old PDA with ASD, ADHD, anxiety, SPD, and possible ARFID.
So, uh, a lot of the work that I do online is geared toward trying to give people their own resources. If they can't access OT for any reason, that could be because it's, insurance in the United States. That could be difficulty getting out of the house. That could be whatever. So I'm not just like, a ton of it is free, so I'm not just like trying to sell my own stuff. I'm saying, if I can't get to everything in 30 minutes, then please go to my website and type interoception into the search bar, or like, anything like that, because there's more there. Webinars and articles. But when it comes to learning about interoception, to some extent there has to be a little bit of buy-in, which I know can be really tricky if a kid is not able to get out and go to OT. Then it might also be because it's just like a threatening concept to even begin with. And so it's going to be really hard to, like, you can't like make somebody else learn something that they are not on board with knowing about themselves. I guess in that instance, the only thing that you could really do is to like model, like describing, with yourself what it is that you're experiencing sometimes, or how it is that what you're experiencing, or what you are guessing that they might be experiencing. And then with PDA specifically, you might want to be doing that in ways that, there's not like a right or wrong. You're like declaring what you see, things like that. But uh I also, a lot of the things that were named in this question, specifically with encopresis and enuresis, which are both toileting related, and with hunger, and you mentioned being related to ARFID, then these are instances where, if you don't already have somebody medical on your team, you want there to be somebody medical on your team. An OT on the internet giving you suggestions about your internal feelings is not a replacement for like what's legitimately a medical issue. If you can't tell that you need to toilet, or when you need a toilet, like a lot of times, um, somebody withholding from toileting, from peeing, or from pooping, um the bowel will like get distended, and then like the nerves have like lost some of their connection, and so there's a literal feeling like nerves are what bring sensation from part of your body to your brain, and so if the nerves themselves are getting damaged from a medical condition, then no amount of like learning about how to feel stuff better is going to like make you feel feelings that your body is physically damaged, and it can recover over time because your body's always healing itself. But I say all that because um it's not just a interoception, meaning being able to interpret your inner body sensations issue. It is also medical in nature. Um, I think that if you are trying to figure out where to even start, then you can't start with something as complicated as like the sensations from your bowel and bladder that you can't see, that aren't like, like tangibly visible in any other way other than your internal sensations. So if your internal sensations are distorted or too small or whatever, then that's a very hard place to start. And so I usually start with activities that have to do with like your hands because you can see them. Or and I'm taking this from Kelly Mahler's work, so I'm not like the pioneer of that by any means. Kelly Mahler Mahler has a bunch of interoception resources. I've also been informed by the Galaxy Guide to Running My Rocket is a great book that's from Australia. I'm blanking on I think their organization is just called Galaxy Guide. That's a really lovely kid friendly one. Kelly Mahler's stuff started out geared more toward adults. And then she like made kid related stuff next, and but I really like Galaxy Guide for being very kid friendly. Um and so anyway, their protocols both begin with doing things that you can see, like activities that involve your hands, and then talking about the way they make your hands feel. If you put your hands in cold water as you're part of playing outside and making water balloons, and then talking about the way your hands feel, or putting your hands in slimy stuff as you're making slime and playing with sensory bin, and so talking about how that makes your hands feel. And then over time, increasing or adapting the activities you do to include other parts of your body too, talking about the way that, you know, your ears feel when you're outside and now it's winter and now it's cold and I would like to wear a hat or some earmuffs because actually it makes my ears feel very cold when I step outside and it's cold, or things like that. That sound basic, but you're drawing a line between being able to interpret ways that your body feels and being able to do some kind of action based on that feeling and that interpretation. And so it's so hard for me to do this in a small summary amount of time because I want to give time to other questions too. Um, and so I reiterate that I've written more on my website and have webinars and stuff on there. But this is like a long game type of thing. There's no like, how can I teach my kid interoception by tomorrow so they stop having accidents? Like that's not that there's no shortcut to learning what's going on inside of your body, and how to make sense of it and how to understand yourself. But these things are like lifelongly important. So so it's worth, the work. It's really tricky.
Thank you. That was so helpful. And I went ahead in the chat if people didn't see, and I dropped some of those.
Awesome. Thank you. I know I was just like
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, that's what I'm here for. Okay. Bonnie asks, can you speak on how to explain a young child's emotional intensity as being overwhelming to the parent that's trying to co-regulate?
So I don't know how young of a child that we're talking about. And this is one where if I was talking to the parent, I would probably try to get a little bit more information. Um, but I don't know that this is necessarily something that you need to explain to a young child. I guess again, depending on how old of a child we're talking about, but probably before like the teen years. I don't know at what exact age I would say like, when the day they turn 8, then tell them. But like so as I'm giving a very general, answer here. Um I I think that if your desire to explain yourself to your child is coming from a desire to be heard and understood and have a support person, then you need a different support person than your child. If your desire to explain, that the intensity of what your child is going through is because you are like hoping to get them to tone it down, then you could explain it the best ever in the whole entire world, and they would not that wouldn't do anything because it's not an understanding or a logic based disconnect. So a lot of times I talk to parents in like lots and lots of different settings about lots and lots of different things, and they'll feel like, well, if I could just explain it to them well enough, then they would understand and then they would accept it. And that's not like, it's not necessarily a logic based disconnect. I feel like I just said those words, but still true. The disconnect that we're talking about is like when my brain is in dysregulation, I can't access logical things like, by the way, I'm being too much for my mom right now, and so I should tone it down. Like when your brain's in dysregulation, you've lost access to logic. Um, you've lost a lot of higher reasoning functions, and so, like, you need other tools to help you with, it sounds like, with managing your child's dysregulation, with being able to co-regulate with your child, and that's totally valid. And again, not to just like offload, but I've got an old webinar on my website where I talk about regulation, and then I've recently revamped it, but that one is paid. So, if you want a free one, there's a free one on my website that's great and talks about kind of the regulation pathway and how regulation gets built over time, and also trying to find things for yourself that are regulating. Um, and and so I think that this sounds like a question that comes from someone who's very tapped out. And I understand that and have also been there and pretty much am currently still there. Not right this second, but uh these days. And so I think that trying to seek out resources on what you can do with an hour to, to get yourself to a better place, what you can do with a minute and a half to get yourself to a better place, and starting to build those tools in for yourself might start to make a difference in what you can manage with your child.
Oh, I didn't realize I was on mute. There we go. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I'm gonna paraphrase some questions because some came in were pretty long. But one is a teen that masked a bunch as a child and had a lot of severe, sounds like sensory issues, mainly to clothes, shoes, glasses, hot, cold, etc. But now that she's older and has lived like this her whole life and they didn't realize it, she doesn't know or she doesn't want to do occupational therapy and it's affecting her quality of life. So are there things they can do at home that can help with these issues without her pressing her to go to OT?
Yeah. So especially by teenage years, then I think that like I don't have a ton of teen specific resources, but that's almost because I do have like yourself, your inner child, your adult self resources, and a lot of times those are pretty close to applicable for teens. Maybe there's like one or two things in there that's a little too mature or too advanced. Um, but a lot of times by the time I'm talking to a teen, I'm treating them like an adult who, whether they know about themselves, whether they don't know about themselves. A lot of the adults who I talk to don't know anything about themselves either. And I think that a starting place for this question would be like how much the teen believes you that you want to help them now. And that I'm not saying that that's like your fault. Um, PDA is complicated. Our brains are complicated. They say lies to us all the time. And having lived in a body that was struggling with sensory stuff for a long time, maybe before anybody noticed, before they could articulate it, before the parent knew about it, before anybody knew about it, but it still might have produced a feeling of like it's me versus the world, like I have to look out for myself kind of thing. That now you're kind of having to combat against, to be like, I want to help you find solutions to stuff. I want to help you find stuff that feels okay on your body, stuff that smells okay, stuff that like that doesn't bother you. I don't want you to just have to like suck it up and live in the world. I want you to like live well in your body in the world. And so if the child doesn't like believe that yet, then that would be the first start, I think, would be trying to be like whatever it is that you could do to try to show them that you believe that, whether that's I'm going to buy you 12 kinds of soap because you don't even want to come to the store with me and try out different kinds of soap and you think they're all just going to be terrible. So I'm going to buy 12 and bring them home and put them all in your bathroom and maybe you can use one of them, or whatever it is. Like, I'm not saying that everybody's resource is just that they can buy stuff for their people, because I understand that that's not always accessible, um but doing whatever you can to show like I want to help you. um and then with your child, I think trying, once you've got that buy-in, then it's a matter of being able to piece together the language to talk about what it is that you're experiencing. And that's hard. Like, I have recently had knee surgery, and I just wrote pretty recently about how, um, up until I was like 25 or something, then I didn't have any words for like bad things that I was feeling from a sensory perspective other than just like, I don't know, this feels bad, this feels wrong, it's just bad. And nobody in my life was particularly interested in like helping me problem solve or asking me anyway, so I didn't spend any time trying to think about it or make sense of it. And now as an adult, I'm like trying to make sense of it. And so, after my knee surgery, I've been having a hard time sleeping. And for like the first couple of weeks, my brain just like, I just can't sleep because of my knee. I just can't. It's bad. And like with no further words than that. And you can't just problem solve that. That's just like your brain running around panicking because it's on fire. Um, but once I got to where I could like calm myself and think about it, and I had to choose to think about it at a time when I wasn't actively trying to sleep, because part of the problem was that I'd get like halfway to sleep and be in this like weird half dreamy place, and so I didn't have all of my brain. And so thinking about it when I was awake, I'm like, okay, what is making it hard to sleep? Well, like the blankets don't feel heavy enough, because if I put on heavy blankets, then they actively push against my knee surgical site and that hurts. And so, well, what if I put heavy blankets on only my arms? Okay, that's a little better. Okay, now what's the next problem? Well, now my leg feels too cold because my arms are warmer than my legs are because I have blankets on only part of me. Okay, well, what if I put my heating pad that I have for my back, what if I put that under my leg? Does that make my leg warmer with that and a sheet? Okay, yes, it does. And so I'm like taking these little bitty steps, but you have to have the language to say what the problem is first. And so once you have your kids buy in and then you're like talking with them about it, I think it would just be a matter of like working together on figuring out how to even describe what it is that this feels like. And a lot of times people will reach for words that aren't like normal sensory or feeling words. Like, I don't know, this just feels like blah. And it's like, okay, does that mean like, does it like feel like nauseating to smell this? Or does that mean that it feels um, just like repulsive, or like that it feels like cloying, or like, like trying to help them literally find words to be able to describe what it is might help you be able to pinpoint down a solution.
That's super helpful. And I feel like what's great about a lot of the stuff you're saying as well is like it's going to apply to a lot of these questions that are going to be coming through as it's just I feel like it's broad and also very detailed and amazing. So thank you. Um, One of our questions here from Natalie is our 8-year-old son is an ADHD PDA, and we'd like to learn more about building resilience. One specific way we want to help him is with friendships when he has a bad friend day and he sees it as a very all or nothing day, feels powerless to change it, and there's a lot of equalizing at home. Broadly, we find that finding ways to give him autonomy when he's dysregulated, but we aren't sure if and how we are building long-term resilience for him in life, which is of course ultimate goals. Apart from staying regulated ourselves, how can we show him that he's capable of riding the waves of life?
So I get this question so much and in so many different forms. And sometimes it sounds, like well reasoned and like a good question like this. And sometimes it sounds as blunt or as ridiculous as like, well, how can I give my kid what they need right now? Because what do they need when they're 18? And how am I supposed to get from now until then? And I've had a teacher look at me and be like, when is he going to stop using a pencil grip in class though? Because he won't be able to use a pencil grip when he's an adult. And I'm like, but he will though. Like, who's going to come? Like, who's policing adults' pencil grips? Like, what are you talking about? Um, so anytime that somebody's asking me, should I give my kid what they need right now or should I worry about what they'll be like when they're 20? Then my answer is that yes, you should give your kid what they need right now. And if they're, I think you said 8, if they're 8 right now, then when they're 9, they'll need something when they're 9, and when they're 10, they'll need something when they're 10, and one day they'll be 20 and you'll look back and you'll see all the dots connected. Um I understand the feeling of like, if I don't, do something to help them build resilience, then they won't do it. But this is one of those instances where there are sufficient uh you don't have to artificially create this. I There are enough things in the world that come up that are unavoidable, that you don't need to like you don't need to go out of your way to engineer uh resilience building happening, because that is what's happening. Like, part of resilience is going through things over and over and over and realizing that like emotions are survivable. Part of resilience is like playing things, for kids especially, playing things over and over and over, and sometimes they go exactly like you planned and hoped that they would, and sometimes they don't go exactly like you planned and hoped they would, and you feel however you feel about that, and that emotion is survivable. Like, part of growing self-regulation and resilience is like having social relationships where you like do a bad job and hurt each other's feelings, and then, you know, like make up again, and then you know, like figure it out. Like you have to go through the part where you did it bad in order to ever get to the part where you figured it out. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who is like persistently having the same social difficulties because they are like missing a social skill or not understanding what their friend wants from them, like always every day it's the same thing. Like there's nothing wrong with like teaching your kid like, oh hey, sometimes when somebody says blah blah blah, then what they mean is, can you do this with me? Like there's I'm not saying just step all the way out of it and just watch your kid and hope that everything's okay. You can still give your kids skills for things, but I don't think that I haven't ever come across a way for people to be like, um you know, how do I make my kid get through this emotion faster? How do I make us get to the other side of this process faster? Like, you can't. It's a tunnel that you're going through, and when you get out the other side of the tunnel, then you're out the other side of the tunnel.
Mhm.
Um
And that might,
and
I'm just
yeah.
going sorry, there's the Natalie who asked the question is in the room and said,
Oh, perfect.
giving him what he needs is a friendship that he can't have at the time. How can we help him understand that he will be okay? Are there things we can do and say to support him?
I mean, I I feel like, how do I help somebody else understand that they will be okay is like, maybe I'm just the only adult who hasn't attained this yet, but when I'm in the depths of it, I don't feel like things are going to be okay, but also I know that they are, like that there will be a day when everything doesn't feel like it's the worst thing ever in the world. But when I'm feeling the feeling of it, I can't persuade myself out of that. Like, I'm just like feeling like, no, this actually, no, everybody else's problems are fine. Everybody else's problems are all baby problems, but my problem is the only one in the world that's the really, really bad one that nobody's gonna live through, and it's the actual worst thing that's ever happened to anyone ever. Like, that's what your feelings are telling yourself, right? And and that doesn't mean that like intellectually I believe that that's true. Like, you know, this mild inconvenience that I'm experiencing is actually worse than, you know, like war, but like but the feeling feels big and huge, and I don't know that one person can tell another person that they'll get through it. uh I mean, like, you can reassure them and be there for them and be there alongside them and all of that, but I don't know that you can persuade somebody that they will get through it. I feel like you just you live it over and over and over again, and you get to a point where you can tell yourself based on your own experience, like, I have been to the depths of grief before and I have come out alive, and, you know, I have been to, you know, anger and loneliness and disappointment and all of these things that come with friendships. And so I feel like being just like this like ongoing sturdy presence of like, you know, we're not going to be phased by, like, your feelings aren't scary to us. We're not going to pull away from you because you feel any type of way, or you don't have to be anything to be a part of our family. You just are, and so you are. Like, all of that is the pillar to lean on as you are yourself learning and experiencing that emotions are survivable.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. That's exactly how I would navigate that as well. It's just so hard. And
I
Natalie,
know.
I feel for you because it's like such a hard place from a parent too to be when you there it feels like there's nothing you can do to help
And I
them.
think there are practical things sometimes, like, you know, if your kid only has one friend who they love, then is there an area in which you can meet other people? Or if your kid only has one hobby that they ever do, like, you know, is there, like, if there's something that's routinely taking away their access to their only thing that's good, can you make there be more good things? Is like a valid way to like figure out other things for that. Not that if they're sad that one is missing, you have to push them into another, but just so that they know that there are more options for joy producing in the world. Like, I have friends who, like, if they can't talk to me, I am bummed about that. Or like if I have plans with a friend and they cancel on me, but I also, it's not the only person who I love and the only, thing I can possibly do, but I still might flop around feeling sad about it for a while first before I ever, channel it into something else.
Yeah. And Christina just said, Kelsey's book also really helped me learn to accept that all feelings are okay. It's not our job to fix our feelings, our kids' sad feelings, but to be there with them as they work through those. We're not doing something wrong just because we can't make our kids feel happy. And that's so true.
It's
Um,
super true. And
okay.
Christina knows that intimately because she's the editor of the book.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So that probably our last question we'll take is from Erica says, how do you suggest we work through my son's need to argue, even when he's arguing the opposite of what he actually thinks? We've tried ignoring or saying things like, it's nice, we can all have opinions and think about things differently, etc.
So, I loved this question, and there's like so many facets here, and so I'm going to try to be brief, which has never been my strong suit. Um, one facet is that
For
like
my compliment, I'm fine if you are. I'm just
oh
letting.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
One facet is that like as much as arguing is super annoying for like adults to experience from kids, like there's no it if you could magically wave a wand and create like two children who had a completely argument-free childhood with each other, like that wouldn't be like a positive thing for their social development. Like arguing is part of your social development. Is figuring out arguing is complicated. There's so many components that make up arguing. Like one thing is like, like how do I ever say that I was wrong, or like how do I listen to what somebody else is saying instead of just waiting until their mouth stops moving until I can blurt my thing, or like how do I present my thoughts with evidence, and like what constitutes evidence that is worthy of presenting with a thought, and like how can I just make that up, or like does it have to come from somewhere? And then like what kinds of appeals are like useful ones? And so there's all of this stuff with arguing with kids where it's like these are like important aspects of social skills. And some kids who are super argumentative might enjoy learning about, like, literally if you looked up like the names of some logical fallacies or the names of some types of argument, like as if you were doing a little debate club, like some kids might be interested in learning about that and knowing like what kinds of things that it is that they're saying, or like why their brain instinctually wants to say this type of thing, um or like about different kinds of biases, if you heard something recently, then you're more biased to think that it's true than if you heard it a long time ago. Or if you heard something from someone famous, then you're more biased to think that it's true than if you just heard it from a random guy, or things like that, where it's like it is interesting to learn about those things, that the ways that our brains are inclined to work. Obviously, that doesn't help when you're like trying to like talk to your kid and they're like just screaming at you about whatever ridiculous thing it is that they're entrenched about right this second. But that's like a larger, scope of life thing that you can do, is to like lean into learning about what types of things, are parts of debate. And then when it comes to like arguing about things that you don't even necessarily aren't the thing that you think, sometimes that can be like a language difficulty. My own kids will argue things that don't make any sense because, I mean, one reason being because they are getting their parts of language mixed up, and so they're saying something backward, or they're saying they're confused about the way that they're saying it. Another thing is that it's hard to know how to stop in an argument and be like, oh wait, actually no, I don't think this. Like there's almost like this adrenaline component of like you're trying to beat a level in a video game, or like you're trying to complete an obstacle course or something, where you're not like stopping in the middle of an obstacle course and questioning like, why is a hula hoop here now? You're doing it, and so you just do it, and you just do whatever it takes to get to the end of it. And sometimes kids will argue like that too. They're not stopping in the middle to think like logically, like, wait, does this actually, am I still on the position that I began on when we began this like they're thinking, how do I get to the end of this and how do I win? Um And so, I mean, I think that sometimes, you can like just like stop talking about it if that's like fits the situation. Like if it's like we're literally arguing about nonsense, I don't have to continue to engage in this. Um Not in a way that's like like in their face about, well, I'm just gonna ignore you then or anything, like, but just like literally like be like, oh, all right, and drop it. And you could circle back to it if you needed to, if it was important, or you could not if you don't. Um I think that teaching the skill of like, hey, we need to like take a break and come back to this is like is a worthwhile social skill of teaching that adults need to have to be able to be like, even if you're not actually like frustrated with the argument topic, but you're getting frustrated with the course that the discussion has taken, to be able to be like, this is making me start to feel a little bit frustrated, and I probably need 20 minutes to think about my thoughts before I can keep talking about it. Um, can I set a timer and we can come back and talk about this in 20 minutes? And you can do something else if you want, or you can think about it if you want, or here's a piece of paper, you can write down all the reasons you think I'm wrong if you want. Um, and I think that models that like we need to get out of this adrenaline space where we're both just like and we need to let our like logic brain be able to come back in before we can talk about this any further. Whether you're deeply invested in the argument about whether the sky is blue or green at that exact moment or not, you're still modeling that that's like a useful skill, and you want adults to have that skill. You don't want, like, when you're in a relationship with somebody, you don't want to just be like until you're both like exploding. You want to be like, I can't actually talk rationally about this right this second. Can I step away and take a break? And that's a reasonable like skill to have and thing to do. um so I know that that's a like 15 different basics, and none of them went very deep, and I feel like part of the thing with PDA is that I feel like I almost always need to go like 2 steps deeper in order to get past the just like silly basic thing that anybody could tell you. But I hope that maybe that's a start to directional of figuring out how to start to solve it.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And I also, like, if you don't mind, I'll just add from a PDA perspective. I feel like often I have twins that are both PDA, and often, especially when they are arguing things that I know they don't believe, it's just an anxiety response. There's something happening in that moment that is triggering their anxiety, and it's they need to be in control. And by them arguing against what I'm saying gives them the control back. So like, if there, yeah, equalizing, Natalie just said, like, if there is ever an opportunity where there's an argument happening with my kids or they're arguing with me about something, I just agree with everything. Like, if it's not causing harm, I just agree. If my son loves pink more than anything on earth and he's like, why'd you get me this pink shirt? I hate pink. I won't say like, well, you don't. I'll just say, oh, you're right. Oh gosh, how did I not know that? I'm sorry. And chances are 20 minutes later he puts the pink shirt on because he wants the pink shirt. So I don't know if that's what's happening there. It's just something that came to mind when
Yes.
that specific point of it, where it was like saying what they don't want to, they don't really mean.
Yes, I thank you for saying that one, because part of the thing is I'm also picturing like 18 different kinds of argument that you could be
Yeah.
having. Like,
Oh
are you
yeah.
like, we need
Well,
to
in
go to
different
bed, and
ages
they're
as
like,
well.
no, I don't? Or are you like,
Yeah,
like, here's a blue shirt, and they're like, actually that's purple. Like those are very different levels of thing that you're reacting to. So
exactly. Yeah, and age matters as well. My kids are young and I'm still able to do that stuff. I don't know if I'll be able to do that when they're, you know,
my
adolescent.
kids are 5 and 7, and they argued for 20 minutes in the car yesterday about who needed to be quiet. And if either of them had stopped talking, then the other would have also stopped talking. But neither of
Exactly.
them could not be the one with the last word. So and they both wanted quiet. So they were both just going, no, you be quiet. No, you be quiet. No, you have to be quiet. No, you have to be quiet.
Right. Well, Kelsie, thank you so much. There was one person that asked, do you offer parent coaching?
I do. I have a Calendly for it for signing up, and right now it's gonna look like there's not a lot of times, and that's because I'm trying to figure out what time I need to take off for like holiday stuff coming up. But I can put the link in there if we can wait for like just a second.
Absolutely. Um, and I think that was all of we didn't get through all the questions. I'm so sorry if we didn't get to your question.
Gotta come back.
Yeah, and Kelsie is, available for parent coaching, and we will be doing more of these questions and answers. We have one live with Linda Murphy, who wrote the Declarative Language Handbook last year and was our keynote at the conference. So highly recommend checking that one out, and many, many, many more things coming up. So thank you again, Kelsie. And I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.